Donald J. Trump is now president of the United States.
Whenever you want to have a debate with a fake liberal, they always resort to violence.
We need to wake people up. Welcome to The Real News. I'm David Knight, and it is Monday, October the 2nd, 2017. We started off October in a very bloody manner. We've had terrorist events all over the world. You know, it's a bad day when you've got different categories here: Marseille, Edmonton, terrorism in general, and then there is the largest shooting in U.S. history. At the moment, the count has just gone up within the last hour or so from 20 killed to over 100 injured. Then it very quickly doubled, more than doubled, to over 50 killed and over 200 injured. So we're seeing this as it's going up. We're going to have live coverage of what's going on in Vegas. But, of course, then there was also another massive terror attack in Catalonia by the government there, attacking people who'd shown up to vote peacefully. They injured over 850 people standing there peacefully trying to vote in a democratic exercise. And, of course, that's the definition of terror, isn't it? Violence to achieve political means. But we've had people killed in these other terrorist attacks. In Marseille, we had two women knifed by a terrorist who they say they don't know who the guy is, but they believe that he is of North African descent, that he is about 30 years old, shouting Allahu Akbar, and he slit the throat of one woman. Another woman was stabbed in the stomach, and these women were aged 17 and 20. Young women attacked by a backstabbing coward in an act of worship for his cult of death, Islam. And this is what we're seeing over and over again. In Edmonton, Canada, we had an individual, again, this is a 30-year-old man, and he was, as I put it, an asylum seeker from Somalia, so another North African. And, of course, the asylum that I guess maybe he needs to be seeking is Arkham Asylum. That's where we put murderers and people who are insane. This individual first ran down a police officer who was controlling traffic at a Canadian Football League game. He struck him with the car and I guess pinned him between the car and he ran by the car, rammed the policeman's car and the police officer, then jumped out of the car, stabbed him several times, and then fled on foot. Then they saw him get into a U-Haul trailer, and they started doing a search. Once they found him, he went on, started driving very quickly and deliberately running down four pedestrians during that escape attempt. So again, another, we love our Somalis, and this is a guy from Somalia who was involved in the Edmonton attack. And then we have the situation in Las Vegas. This was a country and western concert that was open air, and an individual or individuals, there were at least two people. They said there were multiple shooters. Now they're saying there's one shooter and a woman. They're saying that they have killed the shooter and apprehended the woman, but it's very confusing at the moment to get any details. One thing that is interesting is that the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay, the hotel where he shot from to shoot down into the crowd, it was across the street. That hotel doesn't have windows that open on the 32nd floor. There's not balconies or anything like that. It is sealed. So perhaps that's one reason why they were able to find him as quickly as they did. Nevertheless, quite a few people were killed and injured in that shooting. They had fully automatic weapons, and if you guys have the clip of that, we'll play a little bit of that so people can hear the gunfire before we go to break. Do you have a clip of the fully automatic weapons going? We'll talk about that in just a moment. And the question as to whether or not there were additional shooters, that seems to have now been shut down, although the number of people who have been wounded is now more than 200. Here you go. You can hear that. You hear that very rapid gunfire? That's fully automatic. And, of course, we had at InfoWars, Alex Jones was talking last week. He predicted machine gun attacks in two crowds. And we're going to play that for you, what Alex said last Friday. He said this is going to be general chaos that they're going to try to unleash on people. This particular event doesn't appear to have any connections with foreign terrorists. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight. This is Real News. Welcome back to Real News. I'm David Knight on this Monday, October the 2nd, 2017. We have the largest shooting in U.S. history that is still unfolding. The body counts are going up very rapidly. In just the last hour and a half, it's more than doubled from 20 killed, 20 plus killed to 100 plus wounded. Now it is over 50 killed and more than 200 wounded. And we're still trying to get details on what happened. But let me play for you audio from the event, and you can hear that this is fully automatic fire as part of this shooting in Las Vegas. Here's that video.
That's the AR.
Hear that rapid fire? Mass chaos. This is a video that's raw, shot on the scene. And these are individuals who are running in a tent, trying to seek cover there. But of course, you can hear the gunfire going on there much faster than you can pull a trigger. This is a fully automatic weapon. The latest update, they have now doubled this again. It went from 100, more than 100 injured to more than 200 injured. Now it is more than 400 transported to hospitals. We do not have an update beyond the more than 50 killed. And again, as we were saying before, this is the shooter was across the street in the Mandalay Hotel, 32nd floor, looking down on the people who were having an open-air concert when he began shooting. And as I said, those windows do not open, so that'd be one clue as to where they are. But updates are now saying that it was a fire detector because the massive amount of smoke being released by the gunfire, a fire detector went off and pinpointed the room. So that's one way that they would know precisely where he is. So that's one of the terror events that we're looking at. And of course, last Friday, we had Alex Jones predicting that something like this would happen, saying that machine gun attacks into crowds would be happening, that we would have some kind of a general chaos leading up to what is being planned. Here's that report from Friday from Alex Jones.
Our partners with multiple agencies have responded to reports of an active shooter situation at the Mandalay Bay. I can tell you at this time, we do have a suspect down. Our officers can confirm that for you. But I understand the people of Las Vegas want to help. I see a lot of people out here that are coming down wanting to help. Please steer clear of the area. We have all the resources from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department as well as our partner agencies coming down to bear on this situation. So please stay away from the area. We have had reports of people coming down trying to help. We got that, so we're good right now. But we have numerous victims right now. I don't have a number for you on that, but please keep their families and them in your thoughts as we work our way through this problem. Once I have more information to come back, I will come back and give you that information at this time. But as of now, what I can confirm is we do have one suspect down, and we want people to steer clear of the area. Thank you.
Are there other suspects?
Still looking for anybody else?
Matt Bracken, we've got terror attacks in all over the Western world. In France, Allah Akbar, stabbing women to death, scream till the military kills them. You've got truck attacks going on, running over a bunch of people, trying to stab police till he's shot up in Canada. You've got just, I mean, I went to a gun range today, and it was just women lined up in a jibs, firing, you know, full auto at a place where you can do that. And then when I left, and I had military guys with me, and they were like, yeah, when you left, 4 more groups came in. They were like, I'm not going to get into it. I mean, and they were following me around. I mean, this country, I don't know what's going on, but it's crazy. And the Democratic Party has just absolutely done this. The deep state's done this. They've got some giant double-cross revolution, 100 years, the Bolshevik Revolution planned in the next couple months. And now they admit, that story was linked on Drudge this weekend from Paul Watson, just a whole article with their links where they're saying, we're going operational, we're going to start killing everybody, it's here. I mean, Matt, this is everything you've been warning about for a couple of years, but you said as Antifa politically loses, they'd get violent. Now they're just, I think, the cover for more serious teams and more serious operations. I see preparation for revolution against America by Islamic and communist forces everywhere. It's crawling out of the woodwork here in Austin.
Yeah, it's true, but we're still in the battle shaping phase where there's going to be a civil war. I mean, there's no avoiding that. The train is coming down the track and the bridge is out. But the question now for the left side is shaping the perceptions of who started it. Once this thing kicks off and it's just total kinetic mayhem, then pretty soon it'll just be, well, we're in a civil war. No more free assembly. No more street demonstrations. That'll be banned. Any groups of more than 5 getting out, that'll just be banned. It'll be outlawed. But who throws the first blow is critical to shaping the opening stages of the Civil War. So what the left is trying to do is shape either a false flag provocation, which I still think is the most likely, probably somebody firing into a left-wing crowd, leaving right-wing literature at the scene. Either that or another Charlottesville type, mentally psychotic loser who will be turned into a guided missile behind the wheel of a truck, also to plow into,
Well, you said that about 3 months ago. You said shooting into a crowd or running them over, copying the Islamic attack, and it'll probably be staged, and they'll use that as the red shirt. But Trump came out and said, hey, both sides are wrong, and that ended up basically defeating their narrative because it came out. Then Pelosi was forced to admit they were bad. But I see them kind of already flushing Antifa ahead of the next big event so they don't get the blame.
Told us that before we left.
Yeah, minutes before that, but we just barely made it back into our room whenever it started.
And I mean, were you thinking, oh my gosh, this woman told us that before we left?
Yeah, I thought it had a positive correlation to it. Like, obviously she was telling us that in either to tell us, to warn us, or to tell us that we were all going to die, and she was part of it. So
okay, so they want the description of this woman. Describe to me what this woman looked like.
Her and her boyfriend were both Hispanic. They were probably about shorter 5-footers, probably about 5'5", 5'6". They just look like everyday people. Just.
Can you tell us anything more about them, what they look like? Why were they escorted out? Were they escorted out because you were feeling uncomfortable about what they said?
Yes, because she had been messing with the lady in front of her and telling her that she was going to die, that we were all going to die. So they escorted her out to make her stop messing around with all the other people in front of them, but none of us knew that it was going to be serious.
Okay, so you heard that report there. That was somebody that was at the concert saying that there was an individual who was a lady who was running around saying, you're all going to die, as the concert was beginning, and was escorted out. So that's one of the other bizarre things that were happening there. We have a statement that has just been made by the Sheriff's Department. As I point out, it is now up to over 50 dead, more than 400 sent to hospitals in this massacre, the largest shooting in terms of the number of people involved that we've ever had in the United States. Now, more than 50 dead, more than 400 sent to the hospitals in a massacre where you could hear a fully automatic weapon being used. It was shooting down from a 32-story hotel building across. Here's the sheriff with his update.
It took place earlier tonight. Just a matter of recall. Just a matter of recall at 10 p.m. Last night. We started receiving calls of an active shooter at the Route 91 Harvest Festival located adjacent to the Mandalay Bay Resort. We were receiving information that there was an active shooter that was firing rounds from the 32nd floor. And that individuals that were attending the festival, the number is estimated to be 22,000, were being struck by those rounds. Currently, the Clark County Fire Department is estimating.
All right, we've got to take a break. We're going to be right back. I'm David Knight with Real News. We'll have more updates on the situation in Las Vegas and what is behind it. We thought something was coming like this. We'll be right back. It's Monday, October 2nd, 2017. The largest shooting in U.S. history is unfolding now in Las Vegas. Of course, the shooting event is over. Now they are doing inventory, triage to see what has happened. More than 400 people have been sent to the hospitals. In the latest numerical update, we have seen this double now twice. First, it was over 100 early this morning, then over 200. Now it's over 400. More than 50 are confirmed dead, as you could hear earlier. There was fully automatic fire that was being shot into the crowd of over 20,000 people from a hotel room 32 stories up the Mandalay Bay that was across the street from the open-air concert. We're going to have some more footage from that with the we're going to pick up again with the sheriff was speaking, talking about the latest information there. We also have a clip from the concert we're going to play for you in just one moment. Before we do, real quickly, I want to remind you of the sales that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. We have Vitamin Mineral Fusion Drink. That's 50% off. We also have Secret 12. That's our vitamin B12 formula, 40% off. Alexa Pure Breeze and Alexa Pure Pro, that's our air and water filters, are now 20% off. And we have 20% off InfoWars coffee. That's Wake Up America and either the Patriot Blend or the Immune Support Blend. If you use the code WAKEUP at checkout, that's 20% off InfoWars Wake Up America coffee with the code WAKEUP at checkout. And of course, that is one of the things that is so difficult for people to understand as we look at this 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. And as we talked about last week, the fact that we have, it was Paul Joseph Watson's story, talking about multiple groups saying it's coming November 4th. We have a new civil war that is coming to overthrow the government, talking about how these anti-Fa communists are training with weapons, etc. So there was a lot of stuff that was on the horizon. Last Friday, as Alex Jones was talking to Matt Bracken, they were talking about how there would be some kind of an event that would be firing perhaps fully automatic weapons into crowds. That's what we've just now seen. And so we have to understand, we have to wake up to what is happening here. Because 100 years after the Bolshevik Revolution, now we're going to have a bull crap revolution that is going to be happening here. This is the crap that is being fed to us by these Marxists. And this is something that you have to understand as we see this. There's another thing that I believe that is on the horizon with this. We had a massive rollback working its way through a Republican Congress, a massive rollback of a lot of gun control regulation. We had the suppressor act that was going to take away, I think it was the HEAR Act, HEAR Act, that was going to take away restrictions on suppressors and restrictions on other things that infringe on our fundamental rights to protect ourselves. And this, I believe, when we see these types of events, it's interesting, isn't it, that there's always kind of a coincidental alignment as the Democrats have some kind of a legislative agenda that they want to run through. It was 1 week exactly before they were going to try to push through the UN arms trade treaty that they had the Aurora, Colorado shooting. Exactly 1 week. And that followed what the New York Times had admitted was a false flag attack, the Gunwalker attacks, that a Gunwalker program that was being run. They wanted to have a false flag attack, but that blew up in their face when a law enforcement agent was killed. And then as they were still trying to push through this UN arms trade treaty, coincidentally, 1 week before they were going to have the vote on it, they had the shooting in Aurora, Colorado. Now we have some massive legislation that is working its way through a Republican Congress, and we have the largest shooting. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's just serendipity for those who want gun control. But I am a bit more skeptical about these things. We'll see what happens with this as we learn more about the individuals. But I want to play for you what the sheriff there in Las Vegas was saying. This is a press conference that just happened. Here's the latest update from the sheriff there in Las Vegas.
Place, and we're still exiting individuals that were hidden, and it's just a matter of a process. So it's going to take quite a while for us to completely get through the evacuation phase, and then eventually we will have an assessment on the injuries associated with that. Now our suspect was identified as Stephen Craig Paddock, 64 years old, a white male from Mesquite, Nevada. We have no investigative information or background associated with this individual that is derogatory. The only thing we can tell is he received a citation several years ago, and that citation was handled as a matter of normal practice in the court system. Some important things that I need to get out. The family reunification still is taking place here at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department headquarters. So any individuals that are looking for answers for their family members or friends are welcome to come here, and we will provide that information as we get there. The FBI is vital in the assistance of this investigation. As a matter of help, they are providing a 1-800 number, which is 1-800-CALL-FBI. So as the matter of the number is 1-800-225-5555. 5324. Now that number is to be utilized for any and all information, especially video information or evidence that we can provide the FBI, and they will be the housing of all that critical information. So if you have anybody that has knowledge through your media sources and they want to provide that information, that's the avenue to go. Once they receive an individual on the other side of the line, they'll walk them through the process, and then we'll get them to the online version so they can download that information. Additionally, the coroner's office, as I repeated before, has set up a number for individuals to call, and that number is 1-866-535-5654. That is for individuals that do not have the ability to come down to the headquarters to discuss their family and friends in person. Now, the other critical piece associated with this and any mass casualty event is the need for blood. So United Blood Services have their services set up currently. They are receiving patients or donors at 6930 West Charleston and 601 Whitney Ranch in Henderson. So if you have the ability to donate blood to help the cause, please do so. Additionally, the Laborers Union is offering their facility, their medical facility at 7135 West Sahara for individuals that want to donate blood. And as always, UMC has a pod set up for individuals to go to UMC to donate blood. And that will be the gist of the update.
Okay, so we're going to stop that. I want you to hear
to answer any questions.
the audio from the concert as the shooting commenced. And what you'll hear is the musician who was on stage performing, and then you'll hear the gunfire coming in. Let's go ahead and roll that. So this is concert footage, performing on stage. That's a fully automatic fire. He's still performing. And then at this point, they realized, it took a few seconds, they said, before they realized that there was gunfire going on there. Some people who were in attendance said, well, at first, I thought it was some crackling in the PA system. And even the performer continued on for about another 10 seconds before he saw people falling down, and then quickly exited the stage. He was not injured. Nobody in his crew was injured, but we've had over 400 sent to hospitals. More than 50 have been killed in the largest mass shooting event in the U.S. history. I'm David Knight. This is Real News. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Real News. I'm David Knight. On this Monday, October the 2nd, 2017, we have some updates on the information there. You just heard the sheriff in Las Vegas speaking. Federal law enforcement sources told Fox News that the individual who has been identified as the shooter was, quote, known to local authorities. The sheriff had just said that he had a citation, that they'd taken care of that in normal channels. He didn't go into any detail about that. We've also heard that he has killed himself. First reports were saying that it was he had been shot by a SWAT team. Now the Express in the UK was saying that it looks as though he turned the gun on himself. So he was dead when they got there. He is known to be, they say he has no known terror connections. He is a white male, 64 years old, living in a retirement community, a grandfather. This is very strange. What motivated this? They said they found numerous firearms in the hotel room as investigations in the incident continue. They say, all we know is that there were rifles. We are executing a search warrant on the room. They say we have officers at his residence. We will be executing a search warrant there also very shortly. One vendor who was at the concert told Fox News it sounded like a machine gun. It sounded like more than one machine gun. And this is the, we've had multiple witnesses saying that they thought there were multiple automatic weapons being fired. So, but what we're hearing now from law enforcement is that there was one shooter, a lone shooter, which is what we typically always hear. But let's get some live footage that we have from Dan Bilzerian, who is a celebrity professional poker player who was there at the concert, and he filmed this as he was fleeing the scene.
Holy f***, this girl just got shot in the f***ing head. It's so f***ing crazy.
Again, you can hear the fully automatic fire in the background, and what he was saying there was that he just saw a woman get shot in the head, said this is absolutely crazy, and it is crazy.
This girl just got shot.
Let's play that again.
In the head. It's so crazy.
Okay, and you can hear that, and clearly it is automatic fire. I don't know, as we said before, whether it was one or two shooters. We're hearing now that it is one shooter. We had multiple reports that it was multiple shooters. We also had reports that there were other shootings in Las Vegas. That was put down much earlier as not being true by the local police there. They said there was just one shooting in one area, that it was a single shooter in that hotel room. And again, as we look at the background, there is nothing in this man's background that would indicate why he would be doing this. Nothing has been discovered yet. As an explanation, there's more than 400 people have been transported to hospitals. More than 50 have been killed in the largest mass shooting, largest number of casualties that we've had. There were over 20,000 people in that concert as they were firing, as there was automatic weapons fire into that crowd. So it's not surprised that the casualty numbers were that high. We also have other terrorist events that were happening across the world. In Edmonton, Canada, we had an asylum seeker, a refugee, a man who had been on the police radar since 2015. This is an individual, Somali-born refugee in Edmonton, Alberta, has injured 5 people, one of them gravely injured, a police officer who was struck with the car. This individual struck him with a car at a high speed as the police officer was controlling traffic. Then he jumped out and stabbed the officer several times before fleeing on foot as they continued to look for the individual and found him at a checkpoint. He fled with a U-Haul van and then deliberately ran down, they say, 4 additional people. No one has been killed yet, has died yet in that incident, although I think the police officer is gravely injured. In Marseille, France, we had an individual, again, 30 years old. Now, this individual in Canada, 30-year-old Somali guy who was as part of this. In Marseille, France, they said it was a 30-year-old, approximately, who was yelling Allahu Akbar as he slit the throat of one young girl and stabbed another in the chest with a knife, and then was put down like a mad dog. As he truly is, gets gunned down by the police officers there. Again, a sucker attack, a backstabbing attack from somebody who doesn't even have the courage to face unarmed women as he screams Allahu Akbar. And then in Catalonia, we had a massive terror attack by the government of Spain on people who were there to vote. There was more than 50% of the voters, eligible voters, still voted anyway, even though the police attacked people who were waiting to vote. Over 850 people were injured in the Spanish National Police attacks, but it was interesting to see that we had local police, because there's multiple levels of police there. The local police protected people, and the firemen put themselves between the jackbooted thugs from the Spanish government and the peaceful voters, citizens who were waiting there to vote. Over 50% of the people voted. Over 90% of them voted for independence. And so now the question is, what is going to happen next? Not very clear what is going to happen in Catalonia, because they've said they're going to declare independence within 48 hours of that vote if they had a majority. And clearly the crackdown from the Spanish government gave them a much higher number of people who said they did not want to be associated with Spain. That was looking as though there was about 60% of the people who were going to vote for independence before Spain began arresting politicians, before they began stealing ballots, threatening mayors, and so forth. And then the violence on that particular day, on Election Day yesterday, was unbelievable. People on the left, on the right, throughout Europe and America, regardless of what you think about the Catalonian government. I saw some people make a comment that, well, these people are open borders and pro-EU. It doesn't matter. You have a right to decide what kind of government you're going to be. And I don't agree with American foreign policy that says, well, if there's going to be a communist government somewhere in Central or South America, we need to start a war down there, a proxy war, and shut that down. I think we ought to let those types of governments occur so that we can have a Venezuela to show people how socialism doesn't work, so we don't have to go through that experiment ourselves. And so I don't think that we should ever shut down people's right of self-government. And I think that this is part of a wider movement across the globe for local control. We've seen just the opposite 150 years ago. We saw consolidation of power from regional autonomy into nation states, and that has continued to the point that we are well into globalism, and now the pendulum is starting to swing the other way. People realize this is not something that is working for them, and they want to go back in the other direction. Let's pull up clip number 1, folks. That is the one that you can hear the fully automatic fire as people are fleeing in Las Vegas. I'm going to play that again for you. You can hear the gun go off in the background. Here's that clip.
That's the AR.
You can hear the people screaming, but if you hear the, listen to the gunshots. You know, as I'm listening to that, it's incredible. Not only you can tell that it's fully automatic, but the amount of time that it goes on. I'm really kind of wondering what kind of did he have a machine gun there with a belt feed or something, or were there multiple shooters? We're going to have more information as we come back, as it is unfolding live. This is the largest shooting we have ever had in the United States. More than 400 people have been sent to hospitals. More than 50 are dead in Las Vegas. I'm David Knight. This is Real News. We'll be right back with live updates.
For that, but we just barely made it back into our room whenever it started.
And I mean, were you thinking, oh my gosh, this woman told us that before we left?
Yeah, I thought it had a positive correlation to it. Like, obviously she was telling us that in either to tell us, to warn us, or to tell us that we were all going to die, and she was part of it. So
okay, so they want the description of this woman. Describe to me what this woman looked like.
Her and her boyfriend were both Hispanic. They were probably about shorter 5-footers, probably about 5'5", 5'6". They just look like everyday people. Just.
Can you tell us anything more about them, what they look like? Why were they escorted out? Were they escorted out because you were feeling uncomfortable about what they said?
Yes, because she had been messing with the lady in front of her and telling her that she was going to die, that we were all going to die. So they escorted her out to make her stop messing around with all the other people in front of them, but none of us knew that it was going to be serious.
Now, what you're hearing there was one person talking to the news, saying that there was a Hispanic woman and her boyfriend going around telling people you're all going to die at the concert. She was escorted out. It does not sound at all like the individuals that were involved in the shooting. The person who has been identified by the police as the shooter is Stephen Craig Paddock, a resident of Mesquite, Nevada. He has no known terror connections. He's a white male who'd been living in a retirement community, a grandfather who lived with Marilou Danley in Babbling Brook Court. And so it's not clear what his motivations were. And as we're being told, people who were there as witnesses said that they believed that it was, gunfire was very rapid. It sounded like a machine gun, said one vendor. It sounded like more than one machine gun, he said. People were hearing hundreds of shots. The gunfire was very rapid and reportedly confused with firecrackers because it was so rapid. And we played you several clips where you can hear the gunfire in the background. As we were going to break, it is now daylight in Las Vegas, and people were taking pictures of the Mandalay Hotel there on the side. And those of you who are listening, we'll go ahead and roll that B-roll footage again, folks, showing the hotel there. This is a hotel. You're on the 32nd floor. There are no windows that open. There are no balconies. And as I was saying before, the window had to be shot out in order for him to shoot through that. That would be one way that they could locate him. But also, they would be able to locate it, they said, because of the fire detector going off. There was so much smoke in the room. But it turns out that there are two rooms. Was there one shooter who shot and then went into another room, or were there two shooters in two different rooms? There are two windows that are blown out, as you can see in that video, two windows that are blown out of the Mandalay Hotel. Every time there's a shooting, it seems like we always hear witnesses at the scene say that there's multiple shooters. We heard gunfire coming from the grassy knoll, in other words. And then the police will always show up and say, no, there's one shooter and we got him. Nobody else to look for, nothing to worry about here. And the other thing that is interesting about this, as I said, the fact that they said they've located numerous firearms in Paddock's hotel room, again, singular. All we know is that there were rifles. We're executing a search warrant on the room. Again, they're still talking about a single room, even though you can see that there's two rooms that have the windows blown out of them. Very interesting as we move on with this. Again, the latest update that we have, it's not changed in a short period. In the last hour, we had very rapidly saw the numbers going up from 100 to 200 to now 400 people sent to the hospital. The number of people killed, over 20, and then over 50 people killed. This was fully automatic fire shot into a crowd of 20,000 people at a concert, sustained fully automatic fire. As I said, the question is whether or not it was a single gunman or multiple gunmen. We're going to play for you again in the next hour the clip where Alex Jones was talking to a guest last Friday, talking about the fact that this is something they expected to see, machine gun attacks into crowds, because there's been a lot of chatter from the Antifa movement, or the Antifa, because they're fascists, so call them Antifa, talking about a civil war coming. November the 4th, they say, it begins. A lot of plans with them, training on weapons and so forth. Of course, this individual doesn't seem to have any connections to that, doesn't have any connections to the religion of peace. And yet this is all happening as we see a massive repeal of firearm restrictions working its way through the GOP Congress. I think that has something to do with it personally. There are multiple ways that things are ramping up. As we saw the attacks in Edmonton, Canada, and Marseille, France, those are both conducted by individuals who are about 30 years old. Both individuals were from North Africa. The one in Marseille, they do not know who that individual is, but the one in Edmonton, Canada, has been trying to get asylum for over 2 years. He's been on the quote-unquote police radar since 2015. So he's been seeking asylum. As I said before, put him in Arkham Asylum, but the individual has been flagged by the police there. They chose not to give him asylum, but they chose to leave him in the country. And then you have the incident where he attacked a police officer, struck him at high speed with a car, jumped out, stabbed him multiple times. Later on, as he was cornered at a checkpoint, he then fled and deliberately ran down, they said, 4 pedestrians. So we have 5 people that are in the hospital there. In Marseille, it was more deadly. There, the coward killed 2 young women, 17 and 20 years old, slicing one in the throat, the other one stabbing in the chest. Those 2 women were killed before he was shot by police and killed. But both these individuals, 30 years old, both of them from northern Africa. One of them identified, the one they know a great deal about, the one that was on the police radar for 2 years by the Canadian police. He was seeking asylum. He was from Somalia. And, of course, then there's the other aspect of this, the other, not just the refugees who are coming in from Somalia or other places, but the open borders, as we see New York being taken over by MS-13 gangs because of our open border situation, and because, again, even though these people are on the police radar, we cannot bring ourselves to deport them, even though they have violated the law to come here illegally, even though they've got MS-13 written all over them. We have to wait until they commit a crime. So here's a crime. This is done on Long Island. Police in Long Island, New York, arrested a woman and charged her in brutal MS-13 gang-related homicide. Police say the victim was not a gang member. The victim was Hispanic, however. The gang members reportedly killed the man as a tactic to gain stature within the MS-13 gang, says the Long Island Press. The authorities stated that the woman lured the man to a car where the gang members drove him to Massapequa Preserve. Once they arrived there, officers say the suspect stabbed and slashed the man to death using knives and machetes. That was an initiation rite into MS-13. So we have to wait until the MS-13 gang members who are here illegally actually commit a crime before we can throw them out of the country. And as these MS-13 gang members, many of them young high school students, dreamers, you know, they're in school, they're being schooled at taxpayer expense. And if the law enforcement officers start following them around because they know who the gang members are, in most cases, as I said, they have specific clothing or they even have it tattooed on their face. So it's not too difficult to know who they are. And then the people who are associated and hanging out with them, they start to follow them around. Then the ACLU and NPR get concerned about the fact these people are being profiled. It's like, yeah, they're being profiled. They got MS-13 written on their face. Maybe we should profile them. Maybe we should not wait until they break any other laws other than the laws against immigration that they have already violated before we do something about it. But then they pretend that they can't do anything about it. They pretend that it is somehow bad for us to pay attention to this. And when we look at these murders that are being conducted on Long Island, and again, as I pointed out, my wife grew up in that area, and now they've got, in the county where she grew up, they've got more than 400 known MS-13 gang members. They've taken over large areas of Long Island. And yet the police pretend that they are helpless to do anything about it. They absolutely will not do anything. In spite of all the tough talk that we hear from Jeff Sessions and others, and whenever they even monitor these people, the ACLU calls them racist and says that this needs to be shut down, starts filing lawsuits and so forth. That's the situation that we're in now. And if you want to know where else this can go, when we were in Copenhagen for Bilderberg back in 2014, it was fairly peaceful there. And yet now we have Denmark under siege from the immigrants, out of control. They have military on the streets. They say it's essentially a low-tech jihad where wheels are loosened, large rocks are thrown from highway bridges, rapes, shootings of others, beatings of individuals by masked Arab immigrants because they thought that this guy was an American. And the police did not show up. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight. This is Real News. We'll have live updates on the largest shooting in American history. Stay with us. Welcome back to Real News. It's Monday, October the 2nd, 2017. We're following live updates on the largest shooting in American history in Las Vegas. Over 400 people have been transported to hospitals. More than 50 have died. So we're waiting to get more information about this. This is an individual who had no known terror connections. Stephen Craig Paddock. He was in a retirement community, a grandfather. No indication whatsoever of the motives. He was not killed by SWAT teams. He was already dead when they got to the scene. And yet we can see, even though they're talking about a singular hotel room, we can see as we look right there, if you're following this on the video feed, you can see that there were two different windows that were separated quite a bit. They were on the same floor, but two windows shot out of two different rooms that were quite a bit separate from each other there at the Mandalay Hotel. There were reports of multiple shooters with fully automatic weapons, and now we see that there were two windows that were shot out. So were the two shooters? Did the guy shoot from two different hotel rooms? I don't understand why he would do that. I don't understand the motivation of the man in the first place. We don't know anything about him. There's nothing in his background that would indicate that he would do something like this. We're going to have more updates about this. We're also going to be taking your tips when we come back in the next segment. But in this news break here, I want to give you some background as to what is really happening here. As we look at the multiple attacks that are happening with open borders, with other issues, the way the police are having their hands tied with even MS-13 gangs and the murders that are going on Long Island. We also have Antifa openly plotting to create a civil war. And as Alex was saying on Friday, this was something that was going to be much larger than simply these left-wing student groups that were going to be planning violence. He said, as he was talking to Matt Bracken, they were talking about how this civil war would probably unfold with some machine gun fire into crowds to create an element of fear. There are also bills that are running through the Republican-controlled Congress that would remove restrictions on gun ownership, for example, on suppressors that have been there for a long time. This is something that has been a long time in operation of gun groups to say that we need to have these restrictions removed. So this would be one other way that they would be able to do that with a shooting event. And as we look at all of these different incidents, and as we see people trying to get information about what our government is doing, whether it is what's happening in the schools as educators are trying to dismantle the students' belief in hard work. Here's one example of this, because as we look at this, and we understand that white privilege is something that came from Bill Ayers and the Weathermen, or the Weather Underground. They were the ones who first started talking about white privilege. They talked about white skin privilege. And Bill Ayers, interestingly enough, stopped bombing buildings and doing violent attacks and decided that the place that he could do the most damage was in education. And yes, that is the most dangerous place to be. So we look at these types of things, and we look at the rise of Antifa, we look at the self-loathing that is being created in the schools. You understand that what happens in the schools, what is being done with your children, is far more dangerous than even the biggest mass shooting in American history. And here we have a Pennsylvania professor who says she wants educators to dismantle their students' belief in hard work and quote-unquote whiteness ideologies. Angela Putnam, a public speaking professor at Pennsylvania State University Brandywine, made these assertions talking about whiteness ideologies and saying, if you agree with statements like everyone has an equal opportunity to achieve success, if I can work hard, I can be successful. If you do that, you're buying into whiteness ideology. See, in Europe, they used class warfare. That didn't work for them there. So here they use racism. Now they're trying to conflate the two together. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight with Real News. Welcome back to The Real News on this Monday, October the 2nd, 2017. I'll just say this about this mass shooting. Whenever there is a shooting like this, whether it is real or whether it is manipulated or whether it is a real event that is manipulated for political purposes, we need to make sure that we do not let fear stampede us into giving up our liberty as it did after September 11th. As we begin to look at that in retrospect, it was very clear that that was how that was used. And so when we look at a situation like this, the key thing is to understand where we are, the issues that are unfolding around us, whether it is open borders and mass refugees coming in to take over European and countries and America to flood us with immigrants, or whether it is the left and their plans for revolution to coincide perhaps with the 100th year of the Bolshevik Revolution. All these different elements that are coming in here are very important. But as I was saying in the last segment, one of the key elements that I think is not on the radar of enough people is what is happening in our schools. That is where the people like Bill Ayers are having so much influence. And of course, he's not there in the classroom teaching your children, but he has organizations, and those with him have organizations that affect the way what your children are taught. You have to understand that it is no longer the goal of the schools to teach Johnny to read and write. They want to teach Johnny to be an Antifa member or Antifa. That's what they want to teach. They want to teach them, if they're white, self-loathing. If they're not white, they want to teach them to hate whites. And we see this typically coming from white college professors, people of privilege, if you will, like Bill Ayers. It was the Weathermen who created the white skin privilege issues. And again, he stopped bombing buildings and started bombing our children's minds. And this article we have on the Daily Caller, professor wants educators to dismantle student belief in hard work. What I think is really behind this, if you listen to what she's having to say, we understand that the revolutions that they have started in Europe have been started on the basis of class warfare. They tried to do that here in America, and it didn't work for them. So they went to racial division instead of class warfare. They went to race warfare. And that's where they've been. But now what they're trying to do, I believe, is to conflate the two together. This is Angela Putnam, a public speaking professor at Penn State University Brandywine. And she said she had polled her students that attended her white privilege seminar. See, that's what they are teaching now in school. The kids don't have the tools of learning. The kids don't know anything of any value, anything that's even going to make them valuable as an employee, because they don't need employees. Before these kids really get very far in their work life, if they get that far at all, they're going to have robots taking over most of their jobs, whether it's at the bottom or whether it's at the middle level or whether it's at the top. And so what they want are revolutionaries who are going to create a warfare for them. It's going to be I wouldn't call it a soft kill, I'd call it more of a hard kill. But they have the white privilege seminar, and she said she was concerned, she was displeased that the students supported whiteness ideologies when agreeing with statements like, everyone has an equal opportunity to achieve success. Most of our students believe that. That's why their class warfare hasn't worked in America. And here's another one. If I can work hard, I can be successful. You believe that, then class warfare doesn't work. So that belief system has to be attacked and destroyed. She said students are socialized to believe that we got to where we are because of our own individual efforts. You cannot believe that in the America that they're constructing. You cannot believe that your children belong to you. Your children belong to the state. And when they get serious about it, they're going to educate them. And this is the way they're going to educate them. To take away the idea that you can get somewhere if you work hard. Because if they take that away, now it becomes an issue of race. It becomes an issue of class. And then it becomes a festering problem that can never be solved no matter how hard you work. So what they're trying to do is morph the race warfare and the class warfare together in the universities. This is a planned takedown of our society. We are funding this with our tax dollars. And when you look at what's happening with DACA, when you look at what's happening with illegal immigrants, the biggest pushback against doing anything with this was coming from the universities. These are the universities that extend in-state tuition to people who are foreign citizens. Americans cannot go from one state to the other and get in-state tuition, but a foreigner, a foreign citizen who is here illegally can get in-state tuition at any state they want to go to, because the universities are working with the federal government to make that happen. There's money involved in it for the universities, and there's control involved in it for the government, the same thing that we're going to see as they take over our transportation. Remember, when it's military warfare, they want to control several things. They want to stop the other person from moving. That's number one. That's where the cars are going to come in. They want to stop them from communicating. That's number two. That's where the internet comes in, where they can employ their censorship. And then they want to stop you from shooting. And that's what this event here is going to be used for. Before the end of the day, we are going to see Democrats coming out of the woodwork, screaming for new gun control legislation, screaming to stop down the unconstitutional gun laws that we are currently trying to overturn in the Congress. Move, communicate, shoot. Shut those down, and you will have control of a country. This is a planned warfare. And of course, the other part of this is if you get children at a young age, they're yours for life. Every dictator has known this. Every dictator has openly stated this from the time of Plato's Republic. We don't want them, he said, to even know who their family are. We want to make sure that we have this open hedonistic society. The children don't even know who their parents are. The state raises them. Their only allegiance is to the state. That was his ideal in Plato's Republic, and that has been the ideal of every government since then. You can see elements of it in Hitler's Nazi youth, in the Lebens, what was it called? The German thing, Lebens, anyway, where they were going to breed people and encourage them to create the master race for the state. You can see elements of that in all of these. And so as she goes on to say, whiteness ideologies may be reproduced through a general acceptance and an unchallenging of norms. An unchallenging of norms. This person can't even speak English properly, and she is a public speaking professor. As well as through everyday discourse from a wide variety of racial positionalities. Yeah, okay. So this is where they're going. She sets up role play activities to make sure that people hate white people just as she does, even if they are white, as she probably is. As we go back to this, I want to play a clip for you that we have of the shooting. Again, actually, we've got only about a minute and 29 seconds. I want to take some phone calls of people who may be witnesses to what happened in Las Vegas. Let me give you that number. That is 888-201-2244. Again, that is 888-201-2244 if you want to call in and comment. When we come back, we are going to play for you a clip of Alex Jones talking to Matt Bracken last week and talking about this exact same scenario that happened. Said there will probably be machine gun attacks into crowds because they have to create an atmosphere of fear and panic so that we will give up our freedom for the promise of security. And as we look at this, we were told that the SWAT team was sent to the room, that they identified it based on the broken windows, based on the fire alarms that went off, the smoke alarms that went off in that particular room. But as they got there now, they're telling us that the shooter turned the gun on himself, that he was already dead. Meanwhile, we see that there's not one but two rooms in the Mandalay Hotel that have the windows broken out completely. Those windows are not easily broken, but they could be easily shot out. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight with Real News. We'll take your calls, 888-201-2244 when we return. Welcome back to Real News. I'm David Knight on this Monday, October 2nd, 2017. We're covering the live shooting, or actually, this is live coverage, I should say, of the shooting as it's unfolding. We're getting more information about what happened. We're going to be updating you as that information comes in from the law enforcement authorities and others who are on the scene. In Las Vegas, we've had more than 400 people transported to hospitals. More than 50 have been killed. This is the largest shooting event in U.S. history. And again, if you want to call in with an eyewitness account, that number is 888-201-2244, 888-201-2244. That number is for eyewitness accounts. We have some more information about the individual who is identified as the shooter. Las Vegas police say Stephen Paddock was found dead when the SWAT team breached the room on the 32nd floor of the resort and casino. They say he died of self-inflicted gunshot wound just as the police burst their way into the room. Police found that he was in possession of more than 10 rifles. This information is coming from Clark County Sheriff Joseph Lombardo. He said, right now we believe he was the sole aggressor and the scene is static. And when we look at the pictures of this and we see that there's two windows that are shot out, and as I count this, there are like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 windows apart. This could be a large room, could be a suite, but it is also on a corner. So it's not clear whether these are two different rooms or whether this is one very large room where you see those two windows shot out. They say he has no political affiliation, no religious affiliation as far as we know. Police initially sought a woman who was believed to be his roommate, Marilou Danley, as a person of interest, but detectives later made contact with her, and they do not believe that she was involved in the shooting on the Strip. He lived about 90 minutes with her outside of Las Vegas in the city of Mesquite. He purchased a home in the retirement community for just over $369,000 in 2015, according to public records. He had both hunting and fishing licenses, according to public records, as well as a pilot's license, but no criminal record in the state of Nevada. He may have worked as an internal auditor at Lockheed Martin for some time and managed an apartment building complex in Mesquite, in Mesquite, Texas. So this is, he was in Mesquite, Texas, as well as in Mesquite, Nevada. Interesting. But it appears that there's nothing at all that would raise suspicion in his background. He doesn't have any political affiliations. He doesn't have any social media records. He has no known terror connections. He is a grandfather who was living in a retirement community for a couple of years, and then this happens. Very interesting. We had this report from Alex Jones talking to Matt Bracken. This is on Friday, talking about the multiple instances of a planned civil war that were coming out of leftist groups. And as they were talking about this, they said, well, you know, this is also going to be kicked off by some kind of a gunman who is going to do just a general terror event that will be setting the stage for people becoming very frightened and willing to sell their liberties cheap for the promise of security, thinking that it can be fulfilled by a militarization of the police and getting more militarized, more police on the streets we're going to. Okay, we have somebody on the line who was there. Actually, Kaya Jones, who is a well-known singer. She was there in Las Vegas, and she is an eyewitness. And joining us now is Kaya Jones. Thank you so much for joining us, Kaya. Hello. Do we have her?
Hello.
Hey, Kaya. Thank you so much for joining us. This is David Knight. You're on Real News Live.
How are you?
Hi, I understand that you were at the event. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were. I was invited by John Rich, and Big and Rich were performing. And, you know, John knows I do a lot of stuff with the military. So he said, hey, do you want to come up? We honor our veterans with one of our songs. And it'd be nice to have you as an honorary bartender, because they do a cheers to veterans. They bring them up on the stage. So they invited me up. I was on the stage with them. We went backstage, back into the tour bus, hung out while the other performer performed, drove off. Jason got on stage while we were driving off. We arrived about 5 minutes away at the Redneck Riviera, which is, you know, Big and Rich's bar there on the Strip. And within moments of the guys being on stage, to get, you know, tapped, I was being tapped saying that there's an active shooter shooting on the stage, shooting on the grounds. And we didn't know how many shooters there were. They had friends.
So let me clarify. You were at the event earlier, and just before this had happened, because this was the last act of the night, correct?
Yes.
And so just before this happened, you and the people you were with had left and gone to another location, and then you heard that the shooting had happened?
Yeah, we were not far away. I mean, literally down the road. So by the time he was 3 songs in, the guys were already on stage performing at the bar. When the shooter started, I think Jason was about 3 songs in. We, you know, started to know everything that was going on, because you have to understand there were friends of ours that had performed that were still there. There were a lot of people in our crew that wanted to stay and continue watching. Just happened to, you know, say, okay, we'll just head out. So we had friends that were barricaded in the back. One of our really good friends is a great DJ. His wife and baby were on the 32nd floor with the shooter.
Really?
You know, they're fine, they're okay, but they happen to have a room on that floor.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was barricaded, you know, backstage because the shots started ringing out. And it was, you know, severe rapid fire. We were getting, you know, alerts of people that were at the meet and greet that were deceased at that point.
But the people that you were with, no one was hurt because you left early?
We left early, but we were all on lockdown, you know, and that was kind of a helpless moment, because you had SWAT sweeping the Strip. We were told there were more than one shooter. There was one firearm, you know, tire bar, and luckily we ended up having a off-duty FBI agent with his wife that they'd just been married, so they were on their honeymoon, and he showed his badge and said, is anyone carrying? I'm not carrying. I'm on my honeymoon, but handed the gun over to him. He stood, you know, watch at the door, but we were down, and that's the moment where you're like, we have 7 rounds, one gun, all of us in here. This is when, you know, it just reminds everyone of feeling helpless, and that Second Amendment right that, you know, wow, if we each had something, we would feel, I think, more safe, because you feel very helpless in that moment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And of course, we saw that in Catalonia. Even the firemen and even the local police, they were pretty much helpless against the national police who were coming in there. Nobody was armed. And essentially that can not that you want to escalate violence, but that can be a deterrent to violence against people when they know that nobody is armed. That puts you at a disadvantage. You said that you had some friends who were on the 32nd floor. We see that there's 2 windows that are broken out. In the, they say that there was one room. They're not talking about multiple rooms, but they're like 12 panels apart from each other and going around a corner. Do you know anything about the Mandalay Hotel, where on the 32nd floor were those large suites?
Well, I know this much. I mean, these rooms were all sold out, right? This is a big festival.
We got a hard break coming up. Kaya, can you hold on through this short break that we had and tell us about that hotel? We'll be right back. We're talking to Kaya Jones. She was there at the concert, and we're going to talk to her about the way the hotel was set up, the Mandalay Hotel. When we come back, I'm David Knight. This is Real News. Welcome back to Real News. We have Kaya Jones on the line. And, of course, Kaya Jones is one of the lead singers and founding members of one of the most popular girl groups in history, the Pussycat Dolls, from 2003 to 2005. She's worked with Britney Spears, Mick Jagger, D12, R. Kelly, Eminem, Backstreet Boys, Katy Perry, many others. And she was at the concert in Las Vegas, Route 91 Harvest Country Music Festival in Las Vegas, where the largest shooting in American history took place last night. You can also find her current album is the Crystal Naria album. It's placed her on Google's Play as the top EDM artist. You can also find her at Kaya Jones. That's Kaya Jones.com. Kaya, as we were going to break, you were talking about some friends of yours that you said were also staying on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Hotel where the shooter was. We see that there are 2 windows that are shot out there. Are those large rooms as far as you can tell? Or, I mean, the question is, are those 2 different windows shot out of the same hotel room, or are those 2 different hotel rooms? All they're talking about is a single room from law enforcement. What do you know about that hotel, if anything?
Well, the thing that I do know about that, I haven't actually seen any photos of anything being shot out. I think just in, shock and trying to get home because the roads were shut down. And luckily we were all on Big and Rich's tour bus. That was the only way we got out of being on the Strip. If you were in a car, you were on lockdown, and they were gracious enough to let us through. There was no one on the road. But I don't know because I haven't seen the photos. But what I can tell you about any of the rooms in the Mandalay Bay or any of the, other hotels along the Strip right by the Harvest Festival, they're sold out weeks in advance. You had every top country singer playing this festival, which took place over 3 days. 30,000 people are in the audience when this began. Those rooms being booked out in advance was premeditated. He had to have picked the room or known. I mean, you're talking about 800 feet or further. You know what I mean? This is not someone who isn't skilled at shooting. Clearly, it was premeditated. I mean, how do you get a room just like that? And, the eye in the sky from the moment you get on any of the properties in Las Vegas, I mean, there's nowhere in America with more cameras. So I know that eventually we're going to know more as it develops because I'm
Kaya,
certain.
we're breaking in with some live developments right now. We're going to go back to David Knight here in just a moment. In the last 15 minutes, we'll come back to you later. Nope, it's fine.
All right, Kaya, it said that he had more than 10 rifles in his room. Let me ask you, you said that it was difficult. They had the entire area on lockdown. How long has it been since you got out of there? You said at the time that you left, they still had everything locked down. You were able to get out because you're part of a tour group and they could vet who you were, but everybody else was locked down, getting out of the area. Can you describe for us exactly what that was like?
Well, we were on lockdown at the bar probably, I'm going to say, until maybe 1 or 2 o'clock. We couldn't leave. I mean, we were stuck where we were. At that point, then, we were allowed to then leave. SWAT had swept our area, but I mean, there was one gun between everybody there with 7 rounds. I mean, it was just a very helpless feeling. Everyone was, panicked. You had people crying. John jumped up on stage and, did a loud whistle, got everyone's attention and said, cut the music. Everyone needs to know what's going on because everyone was having a good time. They didn't know that there was a shooter. We knew because we had people on site in real time saying, I'm barricaded backstage. I'm worried so-and-so I think has been shot. I mean, so we were getting updates even I think before it was being reported to the police.
Speaking of updates, Kaya, we have Alex Jones on with some breaking news because things are gradually unfolding there in the area as we get more information. Alex has some breaking news from the site. Hang on just one second. Alex, go ahead.
Yes, about 20 minutes ago, ISIS took responsibility for the attacks, and the police have confirmed that he had, the reported shooter had recently personally threatened them and posted videos threatening them, saying that he had joined ISIS, joined Al-Qaeda, and that he was basically a leftist, just like Reality Winner, and just like so many others that had converted to Islam. It was so angry about Trump and everything that was happening that he went out and carried out this attack. Now, again, clearly it looks like he had help, but we saw the October 1st event of the 100 years of the Bolshevik Revolution coming up, and I'd been predicting that starting October 1st, we'd see terror attacks. In fact, last night with Matt Bracken, I said that I was surprised we hadn't seen a terror attack yet as of October 1st. So I'm going to be doing some live feeds coming up. I'll let you finish up with the survivor here that you're talking to. We're so glad that she's doing okay. And then I'm going to do some live reports as well, breaking all this down. But the Associated Press on Infowars.com, DrudgeReport.com is the full coverage. The video of him saying the threats, all of it is there. We'll be airing all of that coming up very soon here, and then I'll be live from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., breaking it all down. We have a big CIA whistleblower as well joining us today. But Matt Bracken on the broadcast yesterday, author, Navy SEAL, anti-terrorism expert, predicting mass shootings into a crowd of conservatives to get conservatives to start a civil war, or a mass shooting into a crowd of liberals to get liberals to start a civil war, with the entire media pushing civil war, racial division, class warfare, and more. So again, the reported shooter was ISIS. That's now being reported. He had pledged allegiance to ISIS, and he had been making threats and was known by the police. So the big question is, why wasn't he stopped ahead of time? Well, you have all the Antifa all over the country, as we broke last week and as Drudge carried our report that Antifa pledges to launch civil war November 4th. And I said, I believe that was a cover. They launched the Bolshevik Revolution October 1st, 1917. Yesterday, the date of the biggest mass shooting terror attack in U.S. history, was the 100th anniversary of the launch of the Bolshevik Revolution. Now, back to Ms. Jones, one of the survivors of this horrible terror attack, as we continue to analyze the latest developments here at InfoWars News Center in Austin, Texas.
Wow, that's an amazing update. That is, they're now saying that they have information about him being an ISIS sympathizer, a left-wing Antifa activist. What's that? What's that, Kyle?
I'm not surprised. I mean, I think that's the thing people forget, is that Islam is a religion. It's not a race. And everyone needs to stop thinking that it's a race. And
it's not even just a religion, is it, Kaya? It's also a political movement, because it's not just that they want to combine their religion with politics. You cannot separate the two.
No, and that's the thing, is, you know, it's a consistent theme here. I haven't heard of any Buddhists or Hindus, Jews, you know, taking rifles or strapping bombs onto themselves and killing innocent people. People came to unify. We have a lot of division coming, you know, against us in this nation right now. It was an incredible, you know, festival. It was happy. There was every color, creed, religion in that audience. I mean, it was a unity moment to know that innocent people were gunned down from above by a madman, whether he was singular or had help, is just insane. The amount of rounds that he had to have shot, because, I mean, you know, there's over 500 people that are wounded, over 50 people that are confirmed dead. And we have to send prayers. I mean, there was nothing to say that he couldn't have shot John or Big Kenny. We were all on that stage. You had veterans that were on that stage. You know, unmarked police officers, off-duty guys that then jumped to help, that have been shot and killed last night.
The callousness, the hatred is what's absolutely amazing. And, you know, Kaya, when we look at these events like the one in Marseille, you have an individual, as he's screaming Allahu Akbar, cuts the throat of one young woman and stabs another one in the chest up close. And, you know, even though there's so many more people that have been killed at this event, that type of thing, where you do it personally, cut some young girl's throat, that shows the hatred of that movement, that religion and politics combined together that we call Islam. So glad that you are okay, and thank you for joining us so much, Kaya Jones. And again, people can find her at KayaJones.com. Thank you so much, Kaya. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight with Real News.
So we're here, and I'm sure of it, that this whole NFL thing was the activation of this, and my sources concur with that. It's not gone well for them. So if there's a big terror attack that they blame on patriots or Christians or conservatives or, you know, independent media, that's what they want to shut down, not if, when, You'll have 2 or 3 days of them hyping it to get people to a fever pitch so they can make it look like it was organic. But by the second or third night, you've got to be, if you want to stop these folks, you got to be basically eyes and ears. And they're going to hit at night. They're going to start at about 10 o'clock at night. You got to be waiting on them 2 to 3 days after. I don't think they're going to change their operation. This is too tried and true. You got to be waiting for them, ladies and gentlemen, because they're going to try to overwhelm the police forces in cities they don't control first. And they're going to lay them out. They may also do it in cities they control, as they know the police chief will be involved in it and will order basically a stand down. So they're going to make their move. That's where everybody's on edge. And we've really tried to fix this as peacefully as we can. And if the Attorney General, who's completely surrounded, I know, doesn't move on these forces, you need to understand the Antifa idiots are just going to be the cover for the squads and some of the other specialized groups that they're going to be using to decapitate and they think intimidate and confuse patriot government. But you better believe they're going to try to kill conservative Supreme Court justices. You better believe they're going to try to kill Judge Roy Moore, people like that. I mean, it's folks need to know they're coming for you. They're coming for you. October is only a few days away. They're saying their operation launches November 4th. That's probably a diversion. I think the attack's coming in the middle of October. That's just looking at all the pieces. I'd say look for middle of October, but first look for a new Charlottesville much bigger, or a group of Charlottesville. That's going to be the cover for the detonation.
You heard Alex Jones talking, and he was saying, I'm thinking it's going to be mid-October, not November 4th. And, of course, we saw this unleashed on October 1st. And one of the other things that Alex said was everyone better start packing. Think about the two things that we heard about yesterday. We just talked to Kaya Jones. She said they were had just left the venue proper and were just very close to it at another location as they heard this was unfolding. And in that location, there was an FBI agent who did not have a gun on him, an FBI agent without a gun because he was on his honeymoon. So he says, has anybody got any guns? One person had a pistol with just 7 shots. So he said, give it to me. He stood guard at the door. And she was saying, it makes you feel helpless because you don't have any way to protect yourself. If more people were armed, that's what Alex Jones just said. Everyone better start packing. Take a look at what happened in Catalonia. There you have a situation where you have the jackbooted thugs from the national government that are attacking the firemen and the local police who are trying to protect the peaceful voters. But they were outgunned, they were outmanned, and they couldn't do anything about it. It's a deterrent. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a full-on civil war, but it is a deterrent to that force. It is something that when something like this happens in Las Vegas, you better be able to protect yourself. There in Catalonia, you had 850-plus people, elderly women, families with children, bloodied and beaten because they wanted to show up to vote. But this is something that you need to think about. When Alex Jones said everybody better start packing, you better start packing. You better start preparing to protect yourself, to protect your family. Don't wind up in a situation where somebody is up in an elevated hotel room firing fully automatic weapons down into the crowds, down into the street, and you don't know what's going on at the street level, and you've got just one person with a 7-shot pistol to protect everybody. You want to make sure that you're able to protect yourself. That's one thing that is different about America than about the European countries where people are helpless. Even the firemen, even the local police were helpless to protect anyone in Catalonia as the government, the national government's jackbooted thugs went through the streets. Stay with us. I'm David Knight. This is Real News. We'll be right back.
My fellow Americans, we are joined together today in sadness, shock, and grief. Last night, a gunman opened fire on a large crowd at a country music concert in Las Vegas, Nevada. He brutally murdered more than 50 people and wounded hundreds more. It was an act of pure evil. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are working closely with local authorities to assist with the investigation, and they will provide updates as to the investigation and how it develops. I want to thank the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and all of the first responders for their courageous efforts and for helping to save the lives of so many. The speed with which they acted is miraculous and prevented further loss of life. To have found the shooter so quickly after the first shots were fired is something for which we will always be thankful and grateful. It shows what true professionalism is all about. Hundreds of our fellow citizens are now mourning the sudden loss of a loved one, a parent, a child, a brother or sister. We cannot fathom their pain. We cannot imagine their loss. To the families of the victims, we are praying for you, and we are here for you. And we ask God to help see you through this very dark period. Scripture teaches us the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. We seek comfort in those words, for we know that God lives in the hearts of those who grieve. To the wounded who are now recovering in hospitals, we are praying for your full and speedy recovery and pledge to you our support from this day forward. In memory of the fallen, I have directed that our great flag be flown at half-staff. I will be visiting Las Vegas on Wednesday to meet with law enforcement, first responders, and the families of the victims. In moments of tragedy and horror, America comes together as one, and it always has. We call upon the bonds that unite us, our faith, our family, and our shared values. We call upon the bonds of citizenship, the ties of community, and the comfort of our common humanity. Our unity cannot be shattered by evil. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence. And though we feel such great anger at the senseless murder of our fellow citizens, it is our love that defines us today and always will, forever. In times such as these, I know we are searching for some kind of meaning in the chaos, some kind of light in the darkness. The answers do not come easy. But we can take solace knowing that even the darkest space can be brightened by a single light, and even the most terrible despair can be illuminated by a single ray of hope. Melania and I are praying for every American who has been hurt, wounded, or lost the ones they love so dearly in this terrible, terrible attack. We pray for the entire nation to find unity and peace, and we pray for the day when evil is banished and the innocent are safe from hatred and from fear. May God bless the souls of the lives that are lost. May God give us the grace.
And again, that was the speech from President Trump, extending his condolences, saying that we're searching for meaning, and we're also searching for motive. But as we're searching for meaning and motive, we have the Democrats searching for gun control, as you would expect. Daily Caller points out Democrats are immediately calling for gun control after Las Vegas shooting. We have congressional Democrats pushing this, and I said I think this is a very important aspect of what is going on. I have seen personally myself when we were looking at the UN Arms Trade Treaty, and I thought it was interesting as President Trump was at the UN a couple of weeks ago, as he was speaking, one of the things that he was talking about, there were moves within the administration to, for example, move the export of small arms from the control of that, from the State Department to the Commerce Department, so that they could treat it as commerce rather than export of weapons. And this was 180 degrees away from what the UN had been trying to do for quite some time. If you go back to the Gun Walker scenario, all the different programs that began in the Bush administration with the ATF and then went into the Obama administration before it blew up and was even identified by the New York Times as a false flag so that they could push control of small arms crossing the border. That would allow them to enact gun control from the United Nations back into the United States, forcing the registration of gun owners as well as firearms, as well as ammunition. That was a full-on motivation in order to enact very draconian measures here in the United States. That UN Arms Trade Treaty, as it blew up with the Fast and Furious, with a gun walking program that was much larger than Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious was the last part of it. That was the part that blew up in their face. Prior to that, they had the gun walker legislation that was there. When they blew up and everybody realized that it was a false flag, and they had it was in July, if I remember correctly, of 2012. I was there shooting it for an organization. They were pushing this legislation for UN Arms Trade Treaty. The Friday before they were going to have the vote at the United Nations, they had the shooting at Aurora, Colorado, which has many, many questionable aspects to that, as we've talked about many times here at InfoWars. A guy who was a psychological student, psychiatry student, and somehow he becomes an expert at weapons, and he knows how to wire his apartment, and he's found glassite in the parking lot saying, my apartment is wired, and so forth. All of this stuff, which made absolutely no sense. This guy had received multiple scholarships and so forth, and he was just turned into a vegetable, and kind of talked about how his apartment was booby-trapped. It's like, where did he get all the money for all this stuff? Where did he get the training for all of this stuff? And that was done precisely 1 week before the UN was going to try to push through the UN Arms Trade Treaty. I believe they were trying to change the narrative so they could get that through. Now we have just the opposite happening. As Trump is saying, we're going to move the control of arms away from the State Department to the Commerce Department. We have gun bills that are making their way through Congress that would take away restrictions of our fundamental rights to protect ourselves. And as we were just talking about in the last hour, we had Kaya Jones who was there. And they were just a couple of blocks down from the shooting. She had been at that venue. They had left because it was the last act that was there. They had left, they'd gone to another bar down the street with their group of people. And as this was happening and the people came down and said, you got to lock down, there was an FBI agent there who had no weapon. And he quickly asked, he showed him his badge, and he says, does anybody here have a weapon? Between all of them, they had one pistol with 7 shots to protect the group. She said, it makes you feel very, very helpless. Now, if you want to call in with information, I'll give you the number there. That is 866-5 to locate, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. To locate missing loved ones in Vegas, if you want to call in, that number is 866-535-5654. Again, that is 866-535-5654 if you want to try to locate your family there that is missing in Las Vegas. If you are an eyewitness, and only if you're an eyewitness, we'll take your call at 888-201-2244. 888-201-2244 if you have an eyewitness account. We'll take calls later today or tomorrow for people who want to comment about what they think is happening here. But right now, it is still early days. It's still early time. The information is changing that we're getting from individuals. And so to go through and try to analyze in detail what's going on, we're going to wait for that a little bit. But if you're an eyewitness to what happened there, the number is 888-201-2244. But as we see here, the report from the Daily Caller, it's not yet clear how the shooter got his guns or if gun control measures would have prevented him from obtaining them. But Democrats are already demanding tighter controls. They said that he had at least 10 rifles in his room. And again, we see there's 2 windows shot out. They're about 12 panes apart from each other. It could be that it is one single room there. And they say that as they came in, they identified that room. You could see it from the shot-out windows because none of the windows in that high-rise hotel open. So the windows were shot out. They also had indications from fire alarms because of the massive amount of smoke, the amount of shooting that was going off. Fully automatic rifles, which it's probably already prohibited. It's very difficult. You can legally get fully automatic rifles, but you have to go through special permitting issues. They say that he had hunting permits. He also had a pilot's license. He had absolutely no criminal background. So he had a hunting and fishing license. It doesn't say that he had a license to have fully automatic weapons. He had no criminal background. His family said he had no political or religious affiliations. They were totally blindsided by this, but we have ISIS saying he was one of theirs and taking credit for this attack. So this information is continuing to unfold as to why this 64-year-old grandfather who lived about 90 minutes north of Las Vegas in a retirement community, why he would commit a heinous mass terror event. Again, it's the largest shooting in American history. Over 400 people have been taken to hospitals. More than 50 have been pronounced dead, and the death toll continues to grow up. Elizabeth Warren says tragedies like Las Vegas have happened too many times. We need to have a conversation about how to stop gun violence, and we need it now. And again, are they going to enact more laws that would have prohibited something like this? Is ISIS or ISIS and Al-Qaeda, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but do they go through and check gun regulations, or do they check prohibitions before they start a terrorist attack? Do you want to make sure that you are packing, that you and your family have the weapons to protect yourself if something like this goes down where you are, so that you're not stuck unarmed or with maybe just a one pistol with 7 shots, as the people there were, as Kaya Jones told us, just a couple of locations down from that shooting? You saw what happened in Catalonia. You saw what happened to the police, the local police in Catalonia, the firemen who were not armed. The police were outgunned and outmanned. The firemen had no weapons to protect themselves or to protect the individuals who had shown up to go voting. And you have the jackbooted thugs with weapons, with shields, with bulletproof vests, with helmets and face guards and truncheons, bloodying over 850 people, elderly women, families who are showing up, families with children showing up to vote, and they're slamming people to the ground. That is why you don't have only a professional group of people with firearms. See, that's why we don't want the government to be the sole possessors of firearms. It's not that those people there are going to start shooting at people, but they know that if they're the only ones with firearms, there's absolutely no deterrence whatsoever on anything that they can do. And so you want to have the population armed as a deterrence to that kind of tyranny. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight with Real News. Welcome back to Real News. I'm David Knight. On this Monday, October 2nd, 2017, we have been covering the live shooting, the largest shooting in American history. I want to get back to something else that's been happening over the weekend. And, of course, that is the thing that preoccupied all of the media coverage until this shooting over the weekend. We had Saturday Night Live attacking President Trump because of the San Juan, Puerto Rico mayor and what she had to say. And I want to lay down what's really going on with that in this segment. And then we'll have more updates about the live shooting in Las Vegas. Before we get to that, real quickly, we haven't done a commercial plug for the last hour and a half. I want to remind you of some of the sales that we have at InfoWarsStore.com, which fund this operation. We have 50% off Vitamin Mineral Fusion Drink. That's a drink mix. You get 1 month's supply of drink mix there, and each of those canisters, 50% off. That gives you all the necessary vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, and you can take that in a very easy to take liquid formula, so you don't have to swallow a lot of pills. It gives you all the necessary vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, 50% off. We also have Secret 12, our vitamin B12 liquid formula, 40% off. We have Oxy Powder, a great way to eliminate harmful toxins from your intestinal tract and to cleanse your body. That is 25% off. And this week only, you can get an additional 20% off when you check out, 20% off of InfoWars Wake Up America coffee. And you can pick the blend. We have 2 different blends. We have Patriot Blend or Immune Support Blend. You can get 20% off Wake Up America coffee at checkout when you enter the code WAKEUP. That's 20% off Wake Up America coffee when you enter the code WAKEUP at checkout. we see, and we talked about this last Wednesday, last Thursday, again on last Friday with Gary Haven when he came in. We talked about how the left was trying to turn this into Katrina for President Trump, the same thing they did to President Bush, the response in Puerto Rico. And we had all these people at the middle of the week that were talking about the Jones Act, the Jones Act. Why wouldn't he get rid of the Jones Act? And of course, that was a piece of legislation that's about 100 years old. And as an editorial on USA Today from someone at the Cato Institute pointed out, it's formerly known as the Merchant Marine Act of 1920. It mandates that goods traveling by water between U.S. ports, and again, Puerto Rico is U.S. territory, be carried on ships that are built in the U.S., registered in the U.S., at least 75% American-owned, and at least 75% U.S. crew. And so people were saying, you're not getting anything down to Puerto Rico because of the stupid Jones Act, so you got to get rid of this. Well, President Trump had waived the Jones Act, but that wasn't even the issue. As they were doing these attacks, and here is one that came out yesterday. And we saw even on Friday, 2 days earlier, they're still putting these attacks out, but 2 days earlier, we saw the mayor herself from San Juan, Puerto Rico, who was attacking Trump, who became the point of the neo-Katrina criticism. She was standing in front of massive numbers of pallets of stuff. It was reported that they had about 10,000 cargo containers that were backed up at the port with no way to move it into the country. We talked at length with Gary Haven on Friday about why that is, why there were problems with helicopters. He said they don't have a lot of cargo carrying capability. That's why he was on his way down there with his fleet of private planes that he owns to help fly this stuff into areas where A, there's no roads, and B, they don't have any airports to fly, but he could land on basically unpaved roads and that sort of thing to get supplies into there. So it was an infrastructure issue. But there's something else involved in this as well. We're now learning that we have the Teamsters Union in Puerto Rico putting truck lives matters first. I'm not making this up, folks. We have a Puerto Rican born and raised colonel, Michael A. Valle, and this is reported by Conservative Treehouse, and he made the following comments. He said they have generators, they have water, food, medicine, fuel on the ground, yet the supplies are not moving across the island as quickly as they're needed. It's because of a lack of drivers for the transport trucks, the 18-wheelers. We have the supplies. We have the trucks. There are ships full of supplies backed up in the ports, waiting to have a vehicle unload the stuff. However, only 20% of the truck drivers show up to work. These are private citizens in Puerto Rico, paid by companies that are contracted by the government. Why don't they show up? Well, we have a video. It's in Spanish, so we won't play it for you. But basically, this is the union leader of the Teamsters, and he is pointing out, and his name is Victor Rodriguez, and in Spanish, the reporter is pleading with him to give up his political grievances. And the labor union head, Victor Rodriguez, is complaining about a law that the governor passed 3 weeks ago. The reporter confirms that truck drivers are refusing to work in order to get revenge on the governor. Rodriguez says the governor's own policies have impacted truckers, so now the truckers will show the country their own suffering. Does this sound like Black Lives Matter? Does this sound like the petulant NFL players? What they're saying is, he goes on to say, the reporter says, but this is in the past. Can't you put that aside for a moment? This is an emergency. And then the Teamster Union leader, Rodriguez, says, the country can now experience what the truckers experienced due to the governor's policies. He says the truckers are not responsible for helping the country. That's the job of the governor. He says 3 weeks earlier, nobody cared about the plight of the truckers, so now the truckers don't care about the country. He says since the country doesn't care about the truckers won't help. That's what he is saying in Spanish in the video. So I guess that's what you see there. This is Truckers' Lives Matter. This is the newest social movement of the me generation, the selfish generation, saying this doesn't matter. But now they try to put all of this on President Trump. Let's play that first clip there. As they're saying, President Trump, he needs to get going. Politely.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Jose. You are just completely in the wrong here. And you also need to be more respectful of the people in Puerto Rico who are dying and just pleading for help.
Listen, my family is there. My family is in Puerto Rico.
So is
You're
mine.
totally wrong.
So is
You're totally wrong.
Have you seen seen the pictures of the mayor of San Juan wading waist deep in black floodwater, trying to take residents out of the homes so that they don't drown, until I see the President of the United States getting his butt down to Puerto Rico and is willing to spend one night in the shelter where the mayor is sleeping because she lost her home, along with 700 other American citizens, then he needs to shut the F up. He needs to take his little hands off Twitter. He needs to read what it means to be president manual. He can even read the For Dummies version. He needs to look up the definition of leadership and focus on what he needs to do as president of the United States, instead of being a celebrity joke of a TV reality president, which is the only thing he has done for the past 9 months.
All right, Maria, you expressed that with deep passion.
Well, you know, you want to talk about a reality celebrity on television, that would be the San Juan mayor, who, as she was talking to George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week yesterday, admitted that she hasn't even met with FEMA. There might be some people from her office that have met there. She said, well, you know, will you meet with them? He asked. You know, she said, did you meet with them? Will you meet with them? Because she gives this long rambling thing. And then finally he goes, well, will you meet with them? And she says, well, people from my administration have been to the, yes, I'll meet with them. So people from her administration may have met with them, but she hasn't. And the mayor of another location told the Daily Caller his experience with the federal government has been very different from the mayor of San Juan. He says, in part because, unlike her, he has been participating in meetings with officials from FEMA. She has been participating in meetings with Luis Gutierrez, who gave her the accoutrements, the caps, the T-shirts to get involved in politics because she wants to run for governor of Puerto Rico. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight with Real News. Welcome back to Real News on this Monday, October the 2nd, 2017. It has been a very bloody October already. As we pointed out, as Alex Jones pointed out last week, he was talking about the moves that we have seen from multiple Marxist organizations that call themselves Antifa, the anti-fascists, saying that they were going to have November 4th was going to be the day they were going to make things hit. Alex said at the time, he said, I don't think that it's going to be then. I think they're telling us, giving us a date, but they're going to roll this thing out earlier. He said, I think we're going to see mid-October or earlier. Well, it hit October the 1st. We're starting to see multiple terrorist events across the world, and the largest shooting event that we've had in American history. We're going to have more updates on that. We've got a clip from the family of the man that has been identified as the shooter that we're going to play for you in a moment. But before we get to that, I want to finish on with this other political move that has been developing over the last 5 to 6 days. As I pointed out, the middle of last week, there was a move to demonize President Trump to try to turn this into his Katrina, the way that it cost a lot of popularity to George W. Bush, the way that Katrina relief was mishandled. Is that the case here? As we pointed out last Wednesday and Thursday, as they were pushing this idea that it was a 100-year-old law that was causing the shortage of supplies, a shortage of relief there, because everything has to be shipped into Puerto Rico as an island. They cannot carry it over land. But we learned that there were 10,000 containers full of relief supplies sitting on the docks, and they had no way to move it farther into the country. We had Gary Haven, who is involved in relief efforts there and who's been involved in many relief efforts in other places as a private individual. He always gets involved in these relief efforts. He explained what was going on there, said that there was a big issue in terms of roads that were not passable, airports that were you could not land planes on, helicopters, the military helicopters that did not have a great deal of cargo carrying capacity. And so they were looking for other alternatives like his planes that could land where there were no airfields and that could carry more in terms of supplies. But there is something else going on in this, and that is the Teamsters, who are saying, the governor enacted in Puerto Rico legislation that made things very painful for us a few weeks ago. Now we're going to make you suffer. And only about 20% of the truck drivers are even showing up in those areas. And then you had the mayor attacking Trump with pallets full of supplies behind her, attacking Trump for not relieving the people while she is doing absolutely nothing, as we reported in the last segment. Another mayor saying, well, unlike us, he says, I haven't had that kind of an experience with FEMA. He says, we've actually met with FEMA, and we're working with FEMA. And she had to admit yesterday when she was talking to George Stephanopoulos, a Clinton campaign operator, he got her to admit, even a Clinton campaign operator got her to admit that she has not met with FEMA. And yet she continues to use this for political gain. We have a Puerto Rican cop saying that the San Juan mayor is sabotaging hurricane response for political reasons. This is someone who called into a talk radio show in New York City. It was a Hispanic language radio station. The caller identified herself as a police officer and accused Mayor Cruz, San Juan mayor, the anti-Trump mayor, with a penchant for supporting him befriending convicted terrorists, they add on Got News, accused her of staggering negligence and dereliction of duty. The caller said there are dozens and thousands of food boxes, and when people ask, we cannot give anything away because Carmen Yulin says we cannot take anything out because everything is a soap opera here. Everything is a show. She won't move unless there is a camera behind her. And then we had this clip of a former Puerto Rican attorney general who was on CNN, and I want you to hear this clip, this back and forth from the former Puerto Rican attorney general talking about what this mayor, who now has become the hero of the left and the hero of Saturday Night Live. Here's what the former Puerto Rican attorney general had to say.
We've gone over a lot of this, Jose. So my question is then, what do you think of the president's response to the mayor's plea for help?
Well, the president has done great. And every mayor I've spoken to...
The president's been great. You're
he's
even
been
saying the
great.
tweets that he criticizes the mayor of San Juan is great?
Well, this mayor of San Juan is a political hack who was in bed with the president. She was singing the praises of the president until her political advisor, Luis Gutierrez from Chicago, got there, brought her the T-shirts and said, hey, you want to run
Jose, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second because
governor?
I can't hear you.
If she wants to run...
And if I can't hear you, then I can't go back and forth with questions.
I can't hear you.
Maria, I'll let you try and get a response, but I'll try and get hearing you.
That's why they call him fake news.
Clearly
he goes on. He goes, that's why they call CNN fake news. He is point on. You got the former attorney general of Puerto Rico. His name is Jose Fuentes. And he says she is a political hack. She was singing the praises of the president until her political advisor, Representative Luis Gutierrez from Chicago, got there and brought her the T-shirts. And, of course, you've seen those T-shirts. You know that they're sold on Antifa sites. People are saying, how did she get this? How is she hooked up with all this? Well, the missing link is Congressman Luis Gutierrez. And so he goes down there, gives her the T-shirts, and the Puerto Rican Attorney General, former Puerto Rican Attorney General, says, hey, he said to her, if you want to run for governor, if you want to run, at which point you hear the CNN guy say, I can't hear you. I don't hear you. I guess maybe he could get the paper there and crinkle it right up to the, got some static here on the microphone. I can't, we'll have to go to the other people here. Cuts him off. Absolutely cuts him off. And of course, you got Steve Mnuchin saying, people say, why would he attack the San Juan mayor? See, she cannot be attacked. But the president can be attacked. And it's not a political hack job if you attack the president. But if the president defends himself, then he is the political hack, not the other individual. And so Steve Mnuchin says, hey, when the president gets attacked, he attacks back. And I think the mayor's comments were unfair given what the federal government has done. Let's take a look at some more political hacks here. You got New York Times' Paul Krugman, and he blames Trumpy for a non-existent cholera outbreak. And this is what he tweeted out, Paul Krugman. He says, cholera in a U.S. territory among U.S. citizens in the 21st century. Heck of a job, Trumpy. Now, that got over 14,000 retweets as of right now. And then later on, he comes back. That was at 11:37 in the morning on Saturday. Then he comes back at 5:40. So 6 hours later, he comes back and he says, cholera is not confirmed. Conjunctivitis, yes. Pink eye? Pink eye? How does that compare to cholera? How did he get those two confused? This is a guy who can't tell pink eye from cholera, okay? He says, lack of clean water, the situation is worsening, not improving, makes it a risk, but it's not certain that we have cholera here. That got 560 retweets. So when he attacks Trump and falsely accuses him of being responsible for a cholera outbreak that hasn't happened in Puerto Rico, he gets 14,000 retweets. He gets only 500 retweets when he says, okay, there isn't any cholera there. That's the way this is going. And we have Bernie Sanders saying we have a right to suspect that race is a factor here. Of course we do, because, you know, it's Republican or it's President Trump, so therefore it must be racism. And then we'll go out with this clip from Saturday Night Live, because this is the cartoon politics of assassination and ridicule that we see from Saturday Night Live. They got on this right away, tried to make a hero out of this Puerto Rican mayor who's doing nothing. Here's the clip.
After the mayor of San Juan criticized the government's Puerto Rican relief efforts, President Trump attacked her on Twitter, saying the mayor of San Juan, who was very complimentary only a few days ago, has now been told by the Democrats that you must be nasty to Trump. Oh, really, Donald? You bitch. Was she nasty to you? How nasty? Are you shaking? You want to go smoke a Virginia Slim until your hand stops moving? This isn't that complicated, man. It's hurricane relief. These people need help. You just did this for white people twice. Do the same thing. Go tell Melania to put on her flood heels, get some bottled water, some food, pack up some extra Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl T-shirts, and write them a check with our money, you cheap cracker.
Okay, so there you go, you cheap cracker. Oh, that's not racist, is it? Okay, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Real News on this Monday, October the 2nd, 2017. As we talk about the tears that people have, we have 58 lives have been lost in the shooting in Las Vegas. More than 500 have been injured. And the Democrats are calling for more gun control immediately. And we're going to have the updates from the strident women of the left calling for gun control. And we're going to take a look at what they have to say. Would it really have made a difference, what they're calling for? We got a lot of laws. I wonder which laws he was afraid to break as he unleashed fully automatic fire on the crowd of 20 to 30,000 people. Was he really concerned? Well, let's see, I can use this kind of gun, but I can't use that kind of gun. And, oh, and it's illegal for me to use suppressors, so I won't use a suppressor. Okay, he goes down a list, right? A guy like this is going to go down a list of rules and regulations for Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton and the rest of the Democrat left, and he's going to decide which ones he can do and which ones he can't do. We're going to play a clip of his brother speculating on what his motivation might be in just 1 second. Before we do, real quickly, I'll remind you of the sales that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. This is what funds our operation, folks, and we haven't done very many of these plugs in this show. Just want to remind you of the sales that we have because we do appreciate your support. It's what funds us, and we want to respond and give you deep discounts on things as a thank you, and so we've discounted some of the things that we have right now on sale. 50% off Vitamin Mineral Fusion Drink, 40% off Secret 12, that's our vitamin B12 formula. We have 25% off Oxy Powder. That's a way to eliminate harmful toxins in your intestinal tract and cleanse your body. We have 20% off both Alexa Pure Breeze, the air filter, and Alexa Pure Pro, the water filter. All Emmerich's Essentials, that's our household organic products, are 50% off. And finally, for this week only, and it'll be ending soon, we have 20% off InfoWars Wake Up America coffee. You can get that in either a Patriot blend or an immune support blend. And you can enter the code WAKEUP at checkout to get 20% off InfoWars Wake Up America coffee. That's 20% off with the code at checkout, Wake Up. You need to wake up to what the Democrats are doing. We have, as I pointed out before, immediately we had Elizabeth Warren coming out and saying we have to, we've had too much gun violence, and so now we got to stop it with some more rules and regulations. And I'm going to go to Hillary Clinton here in a moment, but we had others come out. We had Massachusetts Representative Seth Moulton, this is a state representative, saying, as after Orlando, I will not be joining my colleagues in a moment of silence on the House floor that just becomes an excuse for inaction. Thinking of everyone in L.A. and Las Vegas, rather, and praying Congress will have the courage to do more than stand in silence to commemorate them. A New York Congresswoman, Carolyn Maloney, demanded that Congress show they care by taking action on gun control. And we have some breaking news from Alex Jones. Here's that breaking news.
David, thank you. You're going to be popping in during my broadcast that begins in about 9 minutes at Infowars.com/show and on many of the same stations that carry yours. It was Kit Daniels that just pointed out to me, one of our writers for NewsWars.com, one of our lead writers, that noticed they released OJ at midnight October 1st. We looked it up. Vegas never does this. Nevada never does this. Nobody else ever does this. On parole boards, it's always on a Monday or Tuesday, morning, a weekday morning. They release him at midnight. That way, he lives in Vegas. All the media then ran to Vegas. We had this together, the symbolic October 1st of the Bolshevik Revolution that we predicted they would start launching terror attacks on October 1st. Now his brother has come out and basically said he was a liberal and that he was not into guns at all. He was not a hunter. He did not have guns. He was not into guns. That's now being reported by the London Independent and others. But other mainstream media are saying, oh, he was into guns, but showing no proof. So this is a media war. Hillary's blaming the Second Amendment right now. This is clearly an attack on, quote, right-wingers, country music type deal, anti-white deal. On the surface, ISIS is taking responsibility. But the bigger issue here is it's to get folks to have a backlash against the left, maybe attack the NFL physically, and that'd be a good way to get a civil war going. So look for big provocations to come soon. David, I know you're going to finish up the transmission. You'll be joining me 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central today. And after that, the War Room goes all the way until 6 o'clock at night as we've added more broadcasts here. It is the listeners that make it all possible. This is very expensive. We're hiring a lot of new people. We're going to send a team to Vegas. We're sending teams to Puerto Rico as well. So please financially support us because we're hiring a lot of new people and training them right now and spending all the assets we have. Infowars.com/show to fund true independent media that seeks for the truth, that doesn't put out propaganda. Again, back to David Knight.
And very important what Alex just told us, as Kit Daniels pointed out, that, look, this is a very unusual move. They release O.J. Simpson at midnight, just a half hour before this shooting started. That was very unusual. At midnight on a Sunday, October the 1st, they release him so that all the press is there, just happens to be in place as this goes down so it can be highly publicized. I think it's also important to understand that we have some massive bills on the floor of the House moving their way through from the Republicans that would take back some of the draconian regulations that we've had put on gun ownership that would allow people to carry, have reciprocity rules across state lines after people have been vetted as gun owners in their state, that they would not be subject to the kind of draconian regulations that we've seen some of these northeastern gun control states enact on people. But then also the suppressor issue. And as Hillary Clinton points out, she immediately tackles that. They know that this regulation is moving through. They know it's very popular, and they know that President Trump would sign it. So Hillary Clinton comes out and says the crowd fled at the sound of gunshots. Imagine the deaths if the shooters had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier to get. And so there you go. Did he have a permit for full auto rifles? He had 10 rifles, fully automatic rifles. You can hear the gunshots. Did he have a permit for that? You can get it, but you got to have a special permit. And we're going to play what his family said about his background here. But would he have used a suppressor on a fully automatic weapon, or would that have quickly damaged the suppressor, as I believe it would have if he'd continued to shoot it? I mean, does Hillary Clinton really want you to think that he would go down the lists of what he would be allowed to carry and what not? This is a guy, if we're going to just take their narrative as it is right now, he goes out and on a spur of the moment, maybe not, because as we heard Kaya Jones, you had to get reservations for these rooms were sold out for this big event way in advance. So this is something that's planned way in advance. He plans it, let's say, gets multiple rifles. But according to Hillary Clinton, he goes down and oh, well, no, I can't get suppressors because that's not legal. Now, I'm going to do this mass shooting event, but I'm going to go down the list of what Hillary and Elizabeth Warren say that I'm allowed to have, and I am not going to use any of that equipment because they prohibit it. Now, here's what his family has to say about the background of the man. They're absolutely flummoxed as to why he would do this, but here's what his brother had to say.
He called his mother.
Ever,
It's breaking down.
Ever any indication at all that this would...
Nothing. That we're lost. I don't understand. There's no anything.
No. So they are absolutely at a loss. They do not understand why he would do this. They don't believe that there is any religious motivation out of this. ISIS has said, he's one of our soldiers. Well, I don't know. The family says that they had absolutely no indication, but maybe ISIS knows more than his family does. ISIS says he was one of our soldiers and he did this. And of course, they have threatened to do things in Vegas and San Francisco, and specifically showed a wish list of attacks there. But the family says they have absolutely no idea why this would have happened. But Hillary Clinton knows that her gun control laws kept more from happening there. It could have been much worse if you hadn't had the protection of the Democrats' laws. No, you better make sure that you have the ability to protect yourself. Just as Kaya Jones, who was there, and they had just left the venue itself. They were just a couple of doors down at a bar. And even the FBI agent who was on honeymoon there said, don't have a gun because I'm on my honeymoon. Does anybody here have a gun? One person had a gun with 7 shots in the pistol. He took that gun. He stood guard at the door, and she said everybody was like, I wish we had more to protect ourselves in case there is something else going on here. And you never know if it's going to be just a single shooter. They're telling us now that it was a single shooter, even though we see multiple windows shot out. Maybe that was all in the same room. We're told that he was dead when the SWAT team got there. His family says they have no idea why he would have done this, but the Democrats have the solution. What we need are more gun laws. All right, I'm David Knight. That's it for today's Real News. Stay with us. Alex Jones is coming up, and we're going to have more updates as we get the information coming in on the largest shooting event in U.S. history. We'll be right back.
What the aging process is when the cell replicates, we lose a little bit of our telomeres. Telomeres are the little cups on the end of our chromosomes.
And when it runs out, you start dying. Secure your DNA force today at InfoWarsLife.com.